Am I the a-hole for cheating my coworker out of a free meal? I, 28 male, work with this woman, Lydia, 24 female, who has a very annoying habit. She has a dating profile that she uses specifically to lure guys into buying her expensive dinners at restaurants she wants to try, and then she ghosts them. Lydia brags about this all the time and is never interested in actually dating, but she'll act like it to sell it. I can't stand this because it's playing with people's hearts, but Lydia thinks of it as a life hack to try food or drinks she otherwise couldn't afford. My friend Daniel, 32 male, is also on dating sites, but for the right reasons. His late wife died a few years ago, and he's just started jumping back into the dating scene. Daniel's a very sweet guy, and I really want him to find a great lady for him. A few days ago, he texted me asking if I knew Lydia. They matched and got to talking about work, which is how he found out we worked at the same place. I told him all about Lydia's BS with the restaurant thing and made it very clear to him he would do best to drop things with her early on. Daniel said he'd probably still do the date, but ask for separate checks. Well, they went out this past weekend, and on Monday, Lydia came into work very upset. I asked her how her date with Daniel went, and she ripped into me, asking if I was the one who told him not to pay for her dinner. Apparently, she had Daniel take her to a high-end steakhouse, and she ended up splurging. She got a drink, a full entree with a side and dessert, while Daniel just ordered a sandwich and salad. Her bill alone came to $70-something, and she was almost in tears at work as she didn't expect to pay for it, and now her car was low on gas. I got a little upset too, as she tried to use my friend as a literal meal ticket, but somehow she doesn't see it that way. Daniel told me later the date was going kind of well, until he asked for separate checks, and then Lydia just got weirdly cold. So now Lydia's mad at me because I told someone about her little tactic and it backfired on her. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, since it was a grieving friend I was protecting, but some other people we work with said I should have stayed out of it because it was none of my business. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, her luck finally ran out. I question why Daniel still went ahead with the date after you clued him in, unless it was to show her up, in which case, fair play. It's my kind of petty. He did because it's been a while since he's dated, and he wants to get more comfortable with dating again after his wife died. I tried to talk him out of it altogether, but he said a first date be good for him regardless. Like training wheels. He knew it was going to end poorly either way, so he might as well practice the whole small talk with someone you might be interested in romantically, but isn't your somewhat recently deceased wife. Not the a-hole. She did this to herself. You didn't cheat her out of anything. Her shameful ruse didn't work. If she can't afford her food, then she shouldn't go to the restaurant. You did what was right and protected your friend from a scammer. The people saying you did wrong are people with opinions not worth caring about. She ended up splurging. Yeah, I hate it when I accidentally order food I can't afford. Not the a-hole. This is a con known as Lonely Hearts Scam, or just romance scam. You pretend to be romantically interested in someone, suck up as many gifts as you can, then ghost them. They often target widows and widowers because they're emotionally vulnerable. Lydia will deny it up and down because she doesn't see herself that way, but she's literally a con artist taking advantage of people. Right. Lydia probably tells herself she, or would say if pressed, she isn't. Because she's not trying to maximize, it's just a dinner. But that just means she isn't a maximizing scammer. It's called a foodie call. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my friend I won't set him up with anyone because he's emotionally immature? So, I, 30 female, have a friend, Ryan, 31 male, who's been in my social circle for a few years now. We met through work and became friends after bonding over shared interests, and he's generally a good guy. Funny, kind, etc. He's been single for a while and recently started asking me to hook him up with one of my single friends. At first, I kind of brushed it off and said they weren't really his type, or they weren't looking right now, but he kept pressing. Eventually, I told him I wasn't super comfortable playing matchmaker, especially when I've seen how he handles relationships. For context, Ryan has a bit of a pattern. He jumps into things super fast, gets clingy really early on, like texting 24/7 and needing constant reassurance. And then when there's any sort of conflict or miscommunication, he either shuts down or spirals into guilt-tripping behavior. He's admitted he has some abandonment issues, which he's working on, but from what I've seen, he hasn't really done much besides acknowledge them. I've had female friends tell me his past dates were emotionally exhausting. So I was honest with him and said, "Look, I care about you, but I don't feel comfortable setting you up with someone I care about when I think you still have some emotional stuff to work through." Well, he got really offended, said I was judging him, and basically called me fake for being his friend, but thinking so little of him. I told him that being honest was me being a friend, and that I'd rather be straight with him than set up a situation where someone ends up hurt or awkward. He hasn't responded to me since, and now I'm wondering if I was too harsh or out of line. I genuinely didn't mean it in a mean way, but maybe I should have just lied or kept it vague. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You were honest and upfront, and I would have done the same thing probably. But isn't this reaction basically what you would expect from someone who is emotionally immature and tends to shut down or spiral into guilt-tripping behavior? Unfortunately, it can be just as hard to be a close, honest friend to someone like that as in a relationship with them. Exactly my thought too. Like, this is exactly the kind of response that makes me think he's not quite ready. It's tough, but sometimes being real with a friend is the kindest thing you can do, even if they don't see it right away. Not the a-hole. A setup is a recommendation. You're telling two people you think they might be right for one another. If you can't say that honestly to both of them, well, then you can't set them up. This is why I've refused to give some friends a recommendation to get them hired to a company I work for. If they're an idiot, and I know they're an idiot, it's going to ruin my reputation too, and then I won't be able to get someone who is actually good hired. They're fine to hang out with, but I know they're going to do something stupid or not show up and get fired. I had a manager tell me they hired someone because they name-dropped me, and I told the manager I would have told them not to hire them. Sure enough, they lasted less than 2 weeks. This happened to me as well at my old job. I worked in specialty retail in sporting goods with higher-end clients. My dad used to come around once in a while to get his equipment maintained, and because I worked there, he impressed my boss with his passion, so he was offered a job working in the repair area. I told him this was a bad idea. He was in his mid-70s, has arthritis, and needs glasses for seeing small print. All of the gauges and tools have small print on them. I reiterated this and was told it would be fine. He was just there to help out. Sure enough, I was getting bombarded with texts from my boss saying that he was screwing everything up, scratching/messing up customer orders, etc. He was let go about 5 weeks later. I did recommend a friend of mine to work there as well because we were looking for someone, and he had a lot of experience in the industry. He went into the interview saying he wanted to work in the inventory side of things, which is where we desperately needed someone. Instead, he was hired for a customer-facing role, despite his protests that he wasn't sure he was ready for that, certain anxiety issues he was working through. We already had more than enough customer-facing staff. Sure enough, he fell short in that role due to his mental health and was terminated within 2 months during his probationary period. Long story even longer, my old bosses were great guys but horrible businessmen. They relied on word of mouth, friends, and old coworkers to keep the place afloat. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife we either share our lotto winnings or we separate and I get half anyway? My wife and I are extremely fortunate to have won a decent amount of money from the lotto recently. It wasn't the top prize, but it was enough to pay off our sizable mortgage and still have some left over for vacations. The mortgage was by far our biggest weekly cost. And with that gone, we could both comfortably cut our hours back at work to only school hours and spend more time with our kids. This was always a daydream we spoke about when we bought lotto tickets. I assumed this is what we would both do. When we got the money and paid off our house, everything almost immediately turned bad. My wife started talking about how amazing it was going to be to finally not have to work anymore. I was blindsided by this. Even with the mortgage gone, we would still have to work at least school hours to keep our current standard of living, and on my salary alone, things would be tight. I asked if she was serious, and she said of course, it was her ticket and she gets to decide. This is BS because we both bought lotto tickets before, and when we moved in together, we only bought one because two seemed like a waste of money. I tried to reason with her, said she could use some of the extra to take some unpaid leave here and there, but she needs to keep her job. When I said, if I'm only working school hours, she absolutely flipped and started accusing me of being a gold digger and ruining this for her, saying how she deserved it after working so much of her life, etc. I asked her for a pause because I was honestly afraid. She's never been like this before. Over the next few days, we tried to have this conversation again, but she didn't budge an inch. When she said, well, it doesn't matter now because I'm putting in my notice at work, I lost it and told her I'm not going through with this. If she's not going to share the winnings, which are under both of our names, I'll divorce her and get half through the house, and therefore half the winnings anyway. This started another screaming match where she continued to call me a gold digger. I'm absolutely exhausted and lost. I feel like my wife has been replaced by an imposter. I would have preferred not winning if I knew this was going to happen. Now for the top comments. The good news is that you can afford the divorce. The bad news is that the attorneys will be going on your vacation. Can confirm, my divorce was amicable and cost me $10,000. Can confirm, my divorce was amicable. I'm a lawyer and did a fair amount of work myself. My lawyer gave me a friendly deal, forgot to bill me, then sent me a bill for far less work than he actually did when he was closing down his practice, and it still cost me $2,500. Mine cost $2,500 as well and was not amicable, and I am not a lawyer. But 2 months into the process, the attorney decided my ex was too much fun being an idiot and didn't charge anymore. Took a year and a half, a private investigator, and a lot of bourbon. Lawyer was cheapest part of the whole thing. I am sure if I had gotten billed for actual time, it would have been $6,000 to $7,000. Not all heroes wear capes. Some carry briefcases. My grandfather, who is pretty well off because he lucked into telecommunications at the right time and got into upper management, told me once about a neighbor/friend of his. The neighbor was always struggling to make ends meet and seemed to have misfortune after misfortune. Eventually, he was looking at his house being foreclosed on. My grandparents, who considered this neighbor a great friend, realized they could help him with the money they had accumulated in savings. The neighbor was floored and promised to pay my grandparents back, even taking his second job just to do that. And for a couple of years, he paid back every week on payday. The amount varied, but like clockwork, he'd get home on Friday and his first stop was handing over cash to my grandfather. Then he and his wife won the lottery. It was the grand prize. My grandfather said it was north of $1 million. Within days, they had brand new cars, a boat, a brand new RV, had their house repainted and a new roof put on. And I believe they quit their jobs. Andy stopped paying my grandfather back. Once he had money, he started spending like it was infinite. My grandfather once asked him about it, and he got waved off. The neighbor saying, yeah, I haven't forgotten about you, but let me have a little fun. They took elaborate vacations, went out to eat every day for lunch and dinner, and bought cars for their kids. In just over a year, they had blown through every cent. The neighbor sheepishly walked up to my grandfather and said they had just gotten their property tax bill, and he was a little short. Grandfather just shook his head and turned away. He said sometimes it's worth losing money to get rid of bad people in your life. I always say, if you lend a friend $20 and he disappears or never pays you back, it's money well spent. Last story. Am I the a-hole for keeping a relationship with my brother's ex-wife when they have 2 kids together? My brother was married to his wife for 14 years, and they have 2 boys together, 10 and 12. Their marriage struggled a lot, but they made it last for that long. I became super close with his wife, and she was a wonderful wife and mother to him. I know for a fact my brother cheated on her in the past, even though he won't admit it to me. I'm also 99% sure he left his wife for his current girlfriend, although he won't admit that either. The divorce has been nasty, and restraining orders against him have been in place and everything. They can only speak about the boys. Recently, the boy's aunt, and my mother, their grandmother, made plans to get together with the children and the ex-wife. These plans included staying the night at our house because they live out of town. My brother found out and blew up. He was super pissed off. But we were firm that this was not fair to the children and that the kids deserved to see everyone get along for their sake. My brother talks badly about their mother often, even in front of them, and we've always vowed not to take sides for the sake of the kids. Of course, everything escalated. Our other sibling called me, basically telling me we were terrible, how it was selfish to do this to our brother, and how dare we pick the ex over family. Basically, I was told we were pieces of turd for choosing the children over everything else, and neither of my siblings sees it as compassion for the kids. At this point, the family is split, and my brother wants nothing to do with us, and neither do my other siblings apparently. Am I the a-hole for letting my brother's ex-wife stay at our house with the kids? Should we not have any sort of relationship with her? In my mind, it's best for the kids to see each side of the family get along and not hate each other. The divorce has been very traumatizing for both of them. Not the a-hole. Your brother can't claim any moral high ground, past or present, and he's actively engaging in parental alienation by bad-mouthing his ex in front of their kids. You and your mother being neutral for the benefit of the kids is what should be happening, rather than putting the kids in the middle of hostilities. Document as much as you can for the inevitable custody hearing. Your sister-in-law needs all the support she can get. Yep, totally agree. Family doesn't just disappear because of a breakup, especially when kids are involved. You're doing the right thing by staying present for them. You're not the a-hole. He absolutely is. I had something similar with my ex. I left him when I was pregnant with our youngest. His parents lived 300 miles away and were disabled and sick. They could just as easily visit me as I could them. When they visited, it was usually for a day or overnight. When I visited, it was usually for a weekend, single parent going to school and working. I told them that when I left my ex, it was important that they still be able to see the grandkids. I wouldn't let him have the kids until I was ordered to, by a judge due to narcissism and abuse, and he would just take the oldest out of school whenever he wanted and return him whenever he wanted, until I gave him court papers. I told them, his parents, that I would be happy to drop them off, not the baby, for the weekend, the baby for a few hours at a time until she was older, and I would stay in a hotel to lessen conflict. The hell you will. You will stay in this house. We love you, and that's his problem that he needs to figure out. He found out and gave them an ultimatum, me or him. Mother-in-law literally just said no and hung up. I was there for that phone call. He threatened again, followed up with, "I'm going to get evicted and need you to give me money." His dad laughed and hung up. He eventually got over it when he realized they were not going to give him any money with that kind of attitude. I loved his mother. She was a second mother to me, and my parents loved her as well. We couldn't have cared less about his dad. Sadly, they both died a year later due to illness. Luckily, he's much better now. He's still an a-hole, but better than before.